Good morning, class. We're back together again today to do the ply split braiding unit. Now, ply split braiding is a method of making cloth that isn't your typical method of making cloth. I mean, we think of knitting cloth or crocheting cloth or weaving cloth. We seldom think of ply split braiding cloth. But this is why you signed up for this class. All the cool, unusual things you learn. This is what we're making. We're making cloth using the ply split braiding technique, and it will be in the end a nice scarf for us. Not very warm, but it is the Pacific Northwest and it doesn't ever really get very cold here, so this works out well. So before we talk about ply split braiding, let's talk about ply. What does that mean? Well, if you have had the spinning unit with me, you know all about this stuff. But if you haven't, let's talk about this. You're going to have here a little micro mini lesson in spinning. Fibers come off of the animal, I mean this is the sheep, kind of like this, and we can pick it apart and look at the fibers. See all that wonderful crinkly goodness there? Ow, that is so pretty. This is where the sheep is. This is the cut end. This is where the sunshine is. That's why the tips are a little bit discolored because of the sun. And a spinner would take some of these fibers and insert twist with either a spinning wheel or a drop spindle. And then we would have what is called a singles of that fiber. And that can either be twisted in this direction or it could also be twisted in that direction. Either way, it is a singles. And if you've had the class, you know that one of them is S spun and one of them is Z spun, but for our purposes here, that's not going to be important. This is a spun singles. Look at this mess. These animals, I tell you, they live like animals. If you take that fiber from that sheep and clean it up and comb it out and maybe throw it in a pretty dye pot and get some nice color into it, and in this case, maybe add in some silk for some nice shine, then you can do the same thing, take just a few of the strands, and when you twist them together, you get that singles. Once I have a bobbin full of singles, it sits by itself and it holds that active twist. See, that's physics in there. That doesn't really want to stay twisted. It wants to undo. But I have given it the active twist and I've put it on a bobbin and I've held it in place so it has to stay there. And I go and I make up another bobbin of the same thing and then I will ply them together. I want to do a demonstration for you to show what that looks like, and I don't want to go get out my spinning wheel, so I'm going to show it to you using this as a model. This is a project that's fresh off the loom. This is hand woven by me for the Seattle Weavers Guild sale this October. This has fringes on it. The fringes can represent the strands that we have of singles for making of the yarn. It's the same process. I'm going to weight it down with a book because I like that better. If I were to leave these fringes just as themselves, this scarf would not be as long-lived as it will be if I ply the fringes. So let's say that this little group of fibers, we can pretend that they are sheep wool. I can take two of them, this would be bobbin number 1 and this would be bobbin number 2, and let's say that there was active twist put into them. You see, I'm doing this twisty motion with my fingers. And that is putting twist. You can see the active twist going into my strands. I'm going to want to use more than just what you would think of twist going into these. They really do want to be over twisted without marrying. They want to be over twisted by themselves because when I ply them, they are going to have a lot of that twist canceled out. So there is good active twist in both of my singles strands in my two separate bobbins. Then if I lay them right next to each other and allow them to twist back in the other direction, they will readily do so. I say allow them to twist back in the other direction, but really if I let go of these things without any action on my part, they would twist back together because they want to get rid of that extra twist. once I have them all plied, I put a little knot in it so it doesn't go away. And that there is what's called a balance plied yarn. It's two singles plied back together in the opposite direction of their original spin, and that is stronger, more resilient than these others, which are for, well, example, let's say that this was a rug, and you plied the fringe of the rug, or you didn't ply the fringe of the rug. This rug is going to have its fringes just disintegrated away because people are going to walk on it and the fibers are just going to fall apart. This will hold up longer. So that's how you make a ply. Let's take a look at some yarns. That is a nice balanced yarn, it looks like. The question is, how many plies does it have? Well, I can twist it. If I twist it in this direction, it gets tighter. If I twist it in the opposite direction, it reveals to me its elements. There are two elements in here, two plies, two original singles that were then twisted back on each other. This is a 2-ply yarn. It's both the same color though. Sometimes you can find, this is hand spun by me. Sometimes you can find a yarn that is 2 plies and each ply has a different color. And so it's very obvious to see what's going on in the strand. This is maybe a little garish, a little clown-like. This is what you would find more typically, something a little more subtle. But if you take one strand and look at it, you can tell that it is a 2-ply yarn. One of them is brown, one of them is mauve. So we talked about wool, and if we take a lock of wool off a sheep and it is this long, that's called the staple length of this fiber. Cotton doesn't come off a sheep. Cotton comes off of a cottonseed. It also has a staple length. It's about that long. It is really, really tiny, which means that when you're spinning cotton fibers, you need to spin them very fast to catch all of those little tiny fibers. But it's the same deal with plying. I will untwist this to reveal that this manufacturer has made a 2-ply yarn because plied yarns are stronger. And it's actively twisted. It's not wanting to show me its plies. Let me get in here with my fingernails. There it is. 2 plies of yarn. Here's a manufactured yarn that is acrylic, and that doesn't come off of any animal, you know. This is plastic yarn. If you've had my classes before, you know my opinion of plastic yarn. Anyway, I can untwist that and see that, oh, look at that. This one has 3 plies. Is 3 plies better than 2 plies? Nah. You will have lots of debate about that. Here is another acrylic yarn. This one has, oh my goodness, this one has 4 plies. This is a 4-ply plastic yarn. Very strong, very resilient because it has a number of plies. Now the question then will come up, what can you do with a single other than ply it with another singles? You can find in the manufactured world things that are sold as singles. This is a single. How can we tell it's a single? Because let's see, if I twist it in one direction, it gets tighter. But if I twist it in the other direction, it should reveal its plies. And I don't see any plies there. All I see is fibers. And what's more, once it is untwisted, it just kind of falls apart if you pull on it. That's the distinction of a singles yarn. But these singles are used this way if they're wool. You can get them to felt a little bit to themselves, so the singles kind of want to stay together. The fibers kind of want to stay together in the singles. It's always going to be a little bit more fragile than applied yarn, though, so it's not often found. It is occasionally found. This one is hand spun, but there are commercial yarns available that are singles. You'll never find a singles in cotton. You'll find them in wool, though. So let's untwist the fibers so we see the plies. Whoops, there's only just 1 ply there. It is a singles and it falls apart. That's why you don't often find this. This one is kind of a medium weight. This one is a good heavy one. This is This comes from where does this come from? This comes from Sweden. There you go. This is for rug weaving. So if we unwind it and pull, this one is nicely felted, but it does come apart as a singles. Okay, I'm gonna have to splice when I come up against that in my weaving. So that is a look at what a ply is. Let's talk for just a minute about what is interlacement. Well, to make a cloth, we want to interlace strands. And if you do let's say the simplest one. Here come two strands together. They are supposed to interact. You could tie a knot and they could interact. You could do this then in a web and you would have in the end a fishnet, which is a perfectly useful cloth. So you could knot a cloth together. You could loop a cloth together. We think of crochet, we think of knitting, which is simply a structure of loops of the strand pulled through other loops to make a web. You could, for instance, weave two strands together. In a weaving situation, you have one which is the warp, and then the weft comes along, and the weft will either go above it or go below it. This is a way to interlace these strands to make the cloth. In ply split braiding, the trick is you take a 2-ply or more than 2 plies, sometimes 4 ply. You take a plied yarn and you have it be there waiting for the coming strand in this direction. And if you open up the plies and have your other element come and interact with it, the interaction that it does is it goes through that opening. And that is the interlacement technique that we'll be using in making our ply split braiding. So if you've had my class before, you know that what I like to do in a technique that's going to take some time is show you what it looks like in the middle of the process rather than showing you how to start it right away, because 95% of the time you're going to be working on it like this in the middle. And the first part is the most difficult part, getting it going. So we'll leave that for just a minute and we will look at how the stitch is done once you get going. We know that, well, we should know, if you've had my class before, you know that warp threads are threads that lay parallel to each other and on a loom would be held under tension. Now these aren't held under tension, but they are parallel to each other and we're going to call them the warp threads. The thread that goes across the warp threads is usually called the weft thread. We don't seem to have a weft thread here at all, but we're going to take the last warp thread and give it the assignment of being a weft thread for one quick pass, and then it becomes a warp thread again. So we don't have another element that interlaces here. We take and change the roles of the warp threads occasionally. So let's take a look at how this is done. Like you saw, I opened up the plies just now and inserted that complete unit through the opened unit. That's what I've done so far with my crochet hook. Starting at this side, I have gotten in between the plies and I will continue here as well. So when I go to take a stitch, I take a look at my situation and I say, that ply has already been split by that purple one, do you see? So I don't want to take that one, I want to take the one underneath of it. And you can either just press your crochet hook through that space, or if the crochet hook that you have in your bag isn't pointed enough to do that, you can also just take the plies and pull them around the head of the crochet hook, either way. So I am not choosing that ply, I'm choosing this ply because that ply already has been split the row above. And when I get to the last one, I don't split it because he gets to be my weft thread. I need to pull him back through, and I want to make a loop in him and hold him on like this. Now, if I let go of that tension, he's going to come out of there. So at least until he gets into the pathway, I need to keep him under tension. And I am going to take the head of the crochet hook and turn it to the side because I'm going to be able to get through this channel easier because there's a little bit of space here on this side of it. If I were to just pull it through like this, you can see that would be a problem. I would catch my nose on the warp threads. So I will turn the nose to the side and I will shimmy, shimmy, shimmy until he's in there. Then I can let go of him because he will behave himself. And I can shimmy, shimmy, shimmy through this whole channel. If by chance it comes off, I do not panic because we know you don't need to panic. I just go get him again, put him under tension until he gets into the channel again, then he'll be well behaved. And I can get him all the way out the other side and then pull. Now the question is, how far do I pull? And how far I pull will be the deciding factor into how wide my scarf is. If I pull too much, I get puckering and that doesn't look good. If I do pull too much and I see that happen, I don't panic because nobody panics in Ms. Marilyn's class. I can always just pull it back out. I mean, I can pull it all the way out. If I've made a mistake, if I've missed one of the warp threads by mistake, I can pull the whole thing out again and it will be as if it never happened. So there's never any danger about, this is irreversible. I will steady the stuff and pull it just until it disappears and then fluff the warp threads and there we go. If I want the width to widen out farther, I don't pull as hard. If I want to bring it in because I see I'm starting to get a bulge, then I would pull it a little tighter to keep that bulge from happening. Now, as soon as he is done with his job of being a weft, he becomes a warp again, just like that. And I start the next row. Now, where to go the next row? I could take this one. I could take this one. I could take this one, I suppose, but it would then give a whole lot more width, do you see, to your scarf. So I want to be sure to take the one that's most auspicious. Let's take this one because he's right at the edge. And then I come up to this warp and split his plies and split and split. Do you see, I don't want to take this one up here. He has already been split. See the light purple underneath there? I want to take the one that has not yet been split. It may seem like I'm making this way too simple for you guys because I know that you are sharp kids, but you know what? This is so strange with COVID and me not being in the same classroom with you to be able to look over your shoulder and make sure you're doing it okay, that I may be oversimplifying it just to make sure that you working on it outside of my view in front of your computer is, I'm going to feel better if I have explained all of the steps as obviously as I can, even if you don't need it. So be patient with me. I do not mean to insult your intelligence. Coming through, split. This is a little bit fuzzy, this yarn, so it may want to fight you a little bit on the splitting unless you get it straight on through it. Okay, here I am again with my last one. He gets hooked. Under tension, move the nose towards down and wiggle, 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 all the way through, and then pull. Making my ply split web right there. All right. This is done in a yarn that does not have, all of these yarns are the same. Granted, it's a variegated yarn, so sometimes the yarn is brown, sometimes the yarn is purple, sometimes it's lilac, but it is all the same yarn. So it will give me pattern in the scarf only from the variegation of the yarn. I have in some of your bags yarn that has, you have two different yarns. And if you have two different yarns, you can get a diagonal going on. Which way did this go? This one went like this. Because you see here, I split, 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 and grabbed a white one and brought it through, and split, 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 and grabbed a white one and brought it through all the way down until I got about here. And then when I came out, there was a gray one over here, so I would pull that through. And so we've got these strings of color kind of zigzagging across the surface of it. So that is a way to make a scarf. I'll show you when we do the setup how to group your colors together so that they do that diagonal. Another thing that may happen is that you find in your bag a yarn that has one ply is one color and one ply is the other color, and with that one you can do some interesting stuff because you can choose which color you want to show. That's because you can, well, here, let me do a demo. I know this scarf is actually pretty much finished, but I want you to see what it is that I'm doing here, and so we will pretend that this one isn't ending, and we will. So I'm doing here, I am selecting for vertical lines. And for vertical lines, this one needs to be white. Do you see how this vertical line here wants to continue and it wants to be white? That means, oh, I'm sorry, let's do this one here. That's better, Ms. Marilyn. I want this ply because I want to continue the white. I do not want this ply because that would have the white line suddenly become black. So I choose the one that follows the color pattern, and the next one wants to continue the black line, so now I choose the black ply, and here we go. Now this is the situation I want you to see. Actually that one's still okay because I got the black. Now I want to take the white. And this one I want to take the black. So each color is presenting itself to me the way I want it. There is going to be a point, however, if I want to change from vertical lines to diagonal lines, then it looks different. Let's watch that happen. So now I say I want to have a diagonal of white right there. So here I take the white, and the very next one, the dark one presents itself. I don't want to go up here because this one has already been split. Do you see that one already split? So I don't want to take this white one because it's been split. I don't want to take this black one because now I want all the white ones. And so I will go all the way down here and grab this white one. And then just push that extra little half twist up out of my hair and tell him, don't bother me. This one presents as white, and that's the one I want, so I take it. This one presents for black, but I ignore the black and I just choose to take the white below him. This one presents as white, I like that. This one presents as black, I ignore him and take the white below him. This way I can go through and I can choose at will what pixel, if you want to call it a pixel. Oh, that's great. This is why this one has ended. That one has stopped. This is me trying to show from class samples. But you see that when I get to the other side and I bring it across, I will have a row of all white. And then if I want to continue that, I can take the next row of all black without needing to specifically choose any pixel color at all at that point. And in that way, you can keep changing from one to the other and back again. And every time you change from one orientation to the other orientation, there's going to be one row of every other strand having an extra half ply of twist. That's okay. That's not going to bother anybody. Nobody's going to see it when they're looking at the black and the white value difference pattern. You can also get fancier patterns using that same trick with choosing which pixel you want. You need to set this up in a little bit different way. This is a more advanced scarf. We're not going to cover this scarf in this class, but just to let you know, in case you like this technique, there's lots of cool things you can do with it. Okay, now that we've seen how to do the stitching, let's take a look at how to start the project. There's two ways to start the project, a loop start and a start in the middle with no loop. In the bag I sent home with you, you will have your bulky yarn and it'll be in a chain like this. Now this was just chained with my right hand. So in theory, there's a way to get it quickly unchained by letting it loose and then just pulling it and having it all come apart. That may happen for you. The problem is I'm not there to show you what to remove from what, but if I take one end of it and I get those threads out of the loop, which was just put through this loop as a placeholder, then it should just undo for you, just like that. If you find that isn't working for you, let's say that your little brother got into your bag and you just need to undo it. I'll do it from this end now, which will not undo by itself. I just have to look at how it's put together and take out the tails. Okay, where do the tails go now? Take out the tails, and oh look, I have a nice overhand knot that is easy to get out because this yarn is fluffy and cooperative, and you can just work it out like this. Okay, but I'm going to do it the fast way because time's money. Okay, you have, depending on the thickness of the yarn that you chose for your bag, between 11 and 20 strands of yarn. Some of it is kind of tightly plied, and you may have some with it that is not quite so tightly plied. Don't worry, they're going to balance each other out when we start splitting these plies and forcing these plies to live in less space and forcing these plies to live in more space in order to equalize them. So don't worry about any of that. I need to find the center of each of these strands, and I do not want to just find the center of the bundle because each of these strands are maybe a little bit different length. So one at a time, I have to find the strength of a strand. So I will take one strand, and this makes sense. I'm going to put the ends together, and when I do, the other end, the loop, is going to be the center of my strand. So I will go through here and find the center of all strands, and you should too. All right, I've found the middle of each of my strands. I will choose one to be the center of my scarf. This is going to be the loop beginning. And so I now have 2 warps, and I'm going to split the first warp on the right and grab the last one, which is the only other one, on the left. Pull him through. Now, since this is the very beginning, the very middle of the loop here, I know that this tail needs to come all the way through, pull, 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 supporting the strand that's being split so that it doesn't go wonky on you, and there is my first loop. All right, in comes the second one. I hold on to the center of the strand because I know that's what I want to be. Worked is the center of the strand, and I now have 2 warp threads. I still have 2 warp threads. I'm going to split the rightmost warp and split the rest of the warps, there's only 2, and I will pull the next strand through. Now, this is the center of that strand, so I know I want to take one side of it and pull, 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 and move that back to the center a bit. I now have 4 warps. Handling all of these lengths is a little challenging because these things are so long. So you can see what I'm doing, and I will continue doing that. Here is the center of the next one going in. I'm just building a scaffolding that will get me a lot of warp threads. Now let's talk about which ply to take. So there's the ply that's, I'm going to call that ply still internal to the weave. This one here is the first free ply, so I will grab him. And this one, obviously, we know to take this guy and not the guy above him because the guy above him has already been split. Go through. And what you've seen before, I would just grab this one and pull it through, but we are in the beginning and not the middle of it. So let's see, which ply shall I take? I'm wanting to get it wider. I'll take that ply. I'm splitting all of them and adding a new one, not splitting all of them and taking the last one, because this is the start. supporting the warps, shimmy, 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 shimmy. Supporting the work with my thumb so that it doesn't go crazy on me while I do all of this length. And bringing that back to the center. Good job. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. At some point, because I happen to have 2 different colors of yarn, I have to decide where are these going to go and how are they going to be done. I think I will leave these to the end, and we will take a look at how that then looks in the finished scarf. So let me get these set up and I'll be back with you in just a second. Okay, I have decided to put all of my reds in the center, all of my eggs in one basket, as it were, and I'm going to then also group together my black and whites, because that will give me a bold diagonal across the scarf, because the reds are together and the black and whites are together. As I'm building up this scaffolding, I'm hoping that at some point we can have it be a problem for me as I'm pulling through. Here it's being a problem for me as I'm trying to split. So you get to see that too. There, oh, there's some tinsel in there. That probably came from the factory. So it's okay to get your thumbnails in there and just force that open. This is a very soft yarn, so you'll probably want to be a little bit careful not to make it raggedy. But a hard twisted ply split braid is not what we want to lay against our neck, so we chose the soft stuff. Okay, I do split the last one because I am still building my triangle. And in goes the opposing color. Yes, good, we have a problem. Ha-ha! I'm trying to pull through the black and whites, and I have caught some red in there, which is not allowed in there. So we'll go back up and we'll see where it happened. Happened right in the very beginning. Good, I need to actually get through it. It is okay to get it on your hook and then under tension until you get it into the channel. Just move the plies along to get it through. This black and white is a little bit thicker than the red, and so it's saying, what? We've got to open that much? You're kidding. And we now have another color. I'm seeing a little bit of weft showing. I don't want weft to show, so I'm going to scoochy them together a little bit until it's less obvious. Obviously with this soft stuff, it's just going to be a little loosey-goosey on us. Okay, having made the decision to keep all of the black and whites together, I will put this in here and we'll take a look at what we've got once I do.